A 9-0 Supreme Court decision just hit, and almost nobody is explaining what it really means for gun owners, gun makers, and the future of gun lawsuits in America. And if you hear the words unanimous ruling and think this is just lawyer talk, you could miss one of the biggest nationwide legal signals the court has sent in years. Quick question before we continue. Are you subscribed? Because what I'm about to break down could save you from repeating bad legal takes, sharing false panic online, and completely missing where gun law fights are headed next. Hit that button now. Here's what just happened. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 unanimous decision, shut down Mexico's lawsuit against major American gun makers in Smith and Wesson Brands versus Estados Unidos Mexicanos. That means every justice agreed the case could not move forward on the claims Mexico made. And when the court goes 9-0 on something this big, you should pay attention. Because this was not some small technical fight. This was a major attempt to hold U.S. gun companies legally responsible for the criminal misuse of guns by third parties, including trafficking connected to cartel violence. And the court said, in plain English, that Mexico's complaint did not plausibly show the kind of knowing and direct illegal help that would be needed to get around the federal shield law that protects gun companies in many of these cases. Now let me explain why that matters to you, even if you never plan to sue anybody and never plan to work in the gun industry. First thing, this decision is a huge nationwide message about limits. A lot of people think courts can just keep stretching gun company liability forever. This ruling says not so fast. If you want to get around the federal immunity law, you need real facts, not just a broad story that bad people got guns and harm followed. Second, this tells lower courts to be much more careful before letting these lawsuits survive. And that matters because once a case survives, the punishment can become the process. Years of discovery, massive legal bills, pressure to settle, public attacks, business damage, even if the company later wins. Third, this decision affects the political battlefield. Most people think the biggest gunfights happen through bans, permits, and carry laws. But the truth is, another major strategy has been to use lawsuits to choke the industry from the outside. This ruling makes that path much harder when the claim is built on third-party criminal misuse instead of a clear direct violation by the company itself. And here's the crazy part. Because the vote was 9-0, this is not easy to spin as one side of the court helping one political tribe. All 9 justices agreed the complaint went too far. That kind of agreement sends a stronger signal than a close 5-4 split ever could. But wait, there's something even more important. This case does not mean gun companies can never be sued. That is where a lot of people will get this wrong. The court did not say, do whatever you want. It said the lawsuit in this form did not plausibly fit the exception needed to break through the federal shield law. That is a very big difference. So if you're hearing online that the Supreme Court gave gun companies total immunity forever, that is not accurate. And if you're hearing the opposite, that the decision means nothing, that is also wrong. The truth is right in the middle. This ruling is very strong for the industry, but it is not a blank check. Let me break this down another way. Think of the federal shield law like a locked gate. Mexico was trying to use one special key to open that gate. That key was the claim that the companies knowingly helped illegal sales in a way that fit the law's exception. The Supreme Court looked at the complaint and basically said, that key does not fit. That is why this case matters so much. It does not just decide one lawsuit. It tells every future plaintiff, every lower court, every activist group, and every gun company what kind of claims are likely too weak to get through that gate. If you're finding this helpful, imagine what you'll learn in my next video about the 5 words that protect you when people start twisting gun law headlines online. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Now this is where it gets interesting, because a lot of viewers are going to ask the same question. Okay, but what does this change for me tomorrow morning? Fair question. If you are a regular gun owner, this decision does not change your carry permit. It does not create national reciprocity. It does not strike down magazine bans. It does not rewrite your state's storage laws. It does not change who can buy a firearm tomorrow. And that's important, because panic headlines will make it sound like this decision changed everything overnight. Most people think a big Supreme Court gun case always changes what you can carry, where you can carry, or what you can buy. But the truth is, this case was about civil liability. In simple words, that means who can be sued and under what facts. So why should you care? Because the health of the gun industry affects the practical side of your rights. If companies can be crushed by lawsuits built on broad blame theories, even when criminals are the ones misusing the guns, that pressure can change prices, insurance, distribution, product availability, and even whether some businesses stay in the market. Here's a hypothetical example to explain this. Imagine a company makes a legal handgun. It ships it to a licensed distributor. That distributor sells through normal legal channels. Somewhere later, a criminal gets the gun through illegal conduct and uses it in a violent crime. A plaintiff then says the original manufacturer should pay because it should have known some guns would end up in the wrong hands. The Supreme Court is signaling that this kind of broad chain of blame theory is not enough by itself. Now compare that to a different hypothetical. Imagine a company directly and knowingly works with a bad actor, ignores clear illegal conduct, and helps specific unlawful sales happen. That kind of case is different, and that is why the exception still matters. The court did not erase the exception. It just said the allegations in this case did not get there. Here's what most people get wrong. They hear shield law and think it means special treatment. But every legal system draws lines about responsibility. You do not usually blame a lawful manufacturer for every criminal act committed later by a third party using a lawful product. That basic idea shows up in many areas of law, not just guns. And this is the part that shocked me. Even with all the political heat around guns, the court still came back to a very old legal question. Did the complaint really show knowing, blameworthy help in unlawful sales? The justices said no. That means future cases will have to be tighter, more specific, and backed by stronger facts if plaintiffs want any chance of surviving early dismissal. Broad narratives will not be enough. Now, quick legal note, this is educational information, not legal advice. Always consult an attorney for your specific situation. And let me add one more thing here. If you are a content creator, activist, or just somebody who shares headlines fast, be careful. This is exactly the kind of ruling people misread in the first 6 hours. Some will claim the court protected the entire gun industry no matter what. Others will claim the decision is meaningless because it only affects one foreign government's lawsuit. Both takes miss the real story. The real story is that the Supreme Court just reinforced a strong legal barrier against certain kinds of firearm industry liability claims. That barrier is national, and because the vote was unanimous, the signal to lower courts is even stronger. Hey, 73% of people watching right now aren't subscribed. Don't be part of that group. Join the gun owners and legal watchers who get these updates first. Click subscribe. Now let's talk about the nationwide impacts nobody is talking about enough, because this is where the long game shows up. First, this ruling will likely shape how future lawsuits are written. Lawyers who want to sue gun companies now know they cannot just point to harm, point to trafficking, and hope the case survives. They will need to show much more specific facts about knowing violations and direct unlawful help. Second, this ruling could reduce pressure campaigns built around massive discovery fishing trips. And if you don't know what discovery means, it's the long stage where lawyers demand documents, emails, data, and internal records. Even when a company eventually wins, that process can cost a fortune. A stronger early shield means fewer weak cases getting to that expensive stage. Third, this shifts more of the policy fight back to legislatures and regulators. In other words, if people want broader gun industry restrictions, they may need to pass laws, instead of trying to stretch old ones through creative lawsuits. And whether you like that or not, it matters because it changes the battlefield. Fourth, this could affect settlement pressure. Weak cases often survive long enough to force deals. But if courts are more willing to throw out cases early under this decision's logic, that pressure changes. And when pressure changes, strategy changes. Fifth, this ruling may matter beyond this exact lawsuit, because lower courts often read Supreme Court language carefully when dealing with similar theories. Even when the facts are not identical, judges notice when the court uses strong wording about what does and does not count as plausible. But here's the part nobody's talking about. This case also shows the danger of overselling legal theories in the public debate. A lot of people wanted this lawsuit to become a giant turning point against the gun industry. Instead, the unanimous court treated the allegations as too weak for the exception being claimed. That is not just a loss. That is a warning shot to future litigants. Now, does this mean every future gun industry lawsuit is dead? No. Don't make that mistake. Cases based on direct misconduct, direct statutory violations, or much stronger facts can still raise different issues, and plaintiffs will keep trying. You can count on that. But if you are asking whether this is a major win for firearm manufacturers, distributors, and the broader legal position behind the federal shield law, the answer is yes. Absolutely yes. And if you are asking whether it has nationwide impact, the answer is also yes. Because once the Supreme Court speaks unanimously on what kind of allegations are too weak to break through that federal protection, every court in the country hears that message. Imagine two roads from here. On one road, people learn the actual lesson of the case. They understand what changed and what did not. On the other road, people just recycle dramatic clips and false headlines. One road makes you informed, the other makes you loud and wrong. You know what's worse than not knowing about a gun law change? Finding out after you've already repeated bad information to thousands of people. Subscribe to stay ahead. So here's the bottom line. The Supreme Court's 9-0 decision in Smith Wesson Brands versus Estados Unidos Mexicanos is a major nationwide win for the legal shield protecting gun makers from certain lawsuits tied to third-party criminal misuse. It does not change your carry rights tomorrow, but it does change the legal landscape around how the firearm industry can be attacked through the courts. And that matters more than many people realize, because rights on paper still depend on an industry that can survive in the real world. If the courts become a backdoor tool for crushing lawful businesses without strong proof of direct wrongdoing, your rights can be weakened without a single new ban being passed. So stay sharp, stay skeptical of clickbait, and stay focused on what the court actually said, not what panicked headlines wish it said. If this video helped you cut through the noise, subscribe right now and send this to one friend who always shares big legal headlines before reading past the title. I want this channel to help real people understand real gun law without the fear games and without the nonsense. And of course, simple disclaimer here at the end. This video is general educational information, not personal legal advice. Lawsuits, statutes, and legal risks can change, and your specific situation may be different. So talk to a qualified attorney if you need advice about your own case.